You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Well, hey folks, welcome. It's Thursday evening. This is my program, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com to check out their website, see all the goodness that is Odyssey Radio. And also, if you're listening, you can catch this program in video simulcast over on my YouTube channel. And that's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. One of the best features of going over there while you're listening to the show is there's the live chat room that's going on as this show is playing right now. So go on over, join the other IntrepHeads, have a good time over there conversing about what we're talking about. And sometimes it just gets wild over there and the topics go way off what's going on the show. But it's there, and it's there for you. Thanks for coming over. Now, it's Thursday night. I hope that you are all highly anticipating your weekend, which probably, if you are sequestered at home, won't look much different than the rest of your week. So, let me just say this. For all of those of you walking around in the haze of the blur of days these days, it's Thursday. So, welcome to my show. Let's carry on with where we were yesterday and what we were talking about. We were talking about character and developing character and the things that affect our character. And we were also talking about the moments that make us who we are. Those character things that develop. Life provides these turning points of many kind, but the most powerful of all may be character revealing moments. And they go right to the heart of who we are. The character that we possess. The character that, and you know what, folks? Character is actually something we have power over. We have the power to control that. We might not be able to control the size of our nose, or our feet, or our looks. We can't control that. We can puff it up on the outside, make it look as good as we possibly can. But there are things in life we can't control. But there are also things, like our character, which we have power over. We can control what happens. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have experiences that drive us in one way or the other. We can lose our cool. We can do things that totally lack in integrity and character. But that doesn't mean we don't have power over them. And frankly, folks, I am here to tell you as well that if you are one of those people who suffers from your baggage, the things that have happened to you in your life, your past, the troubled things, the good things. But let's focus for a second on everybody seems to that has problems with where they are, what they're doing, their relationships and things like that can all generally funnel back all the way down to the things that happened to them when they were younger. Now, we all have baggage, and those are things that affect us, sometimes subconsciously. And so we have to dig them out. We have to root out the causes, the initial, the genesis, if you will, of why I am the way I am. And so even with that, we have the power to control who we are. We have the power to look at the baggage and leave it in the past and break the chain, as we were talking about the other day, and somebody commented on that. Breaking the chains with our past, breaking the chains with previous generations. Do you know a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about of late It's stuff that is generationally passed on. It's not hereditary. It's not genetics. It's all in behaviors. And we pass those behaviors. They were passed on to us. We will pass them on to our kids, who will pass them on to their kids. Unless somewhere along the way, somebody breaks that chain. So you have the ability, I have the ability, to break the chains of the things that hold us down, that hold us back, keep us in our baggage. And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, and you tell me if you agree with this or not, I think that many people like to hang on to their baggage. They like to let people know this is where I was, because it is part of who they are now, and so much a part of who they are that letting go of that stuff from the past leaves them out here kind of flailing in limbo, not sure how to do anything or how to act. And so they crave the pains. They want them. They need them. Now, there's a difference between relying on your pains as the stepping stones along the way. To say, I can look at my pain. I don't ever want to eradicate it. I need that because it tells me when I should turn right or left. It's developed the character that I have. But some people like to hang on to that as a security blanket. You don't need that. You have the power to move beyond. If you are in these, as we were talking earlier in the week, these codependent, narcissistic type of relationships, you have the power to set your boundaries. Even though you don't feel like you do, you do. It just takes doing it. It takes work. So we are who we are, and we're products of the moments that make up who we are. But we have the ability to pull out the character-revealing moments and decide who we're going to be. And that's what we've been talking about. And that's where I kind of want to pick up with this, kind of jumping with both our feet into the fire this morning. And I left off, we were talking about the H factor, which is humility and, good grief, I can't think of the other word. I got to, this H factor is honesty and humility. Honesty and humility. Those are two qualities that research has shown over and over again travel together. So ask yourself and put a little mental gauge to your H factor, your honesty, humility factor. Do you have that? Now, humility, I heard an old wag put it once, humility, once you say you've got it, you've lost it. I'm humble. You know, saying I have humility is a tough thing, especially when you're talking to other people. People will look at that and say, oh, well, wow, toot your horn on your humility. But you can be a humble person. You can have humility, possess it, admit you possess some humility. Sometimes humility comes out of the experiences we've had, and we realize we ain't the shit. And so humility comes with that, humbling experiences. And we have to be honest with ourselves and honest with others. And we left off last night, we were talking about character traits are dominated by our negatives. Have you noticed that? People will, many times before they call you out for your positive character traits, they will remember your negative character traits. They'll remember where you screwed up or where you did wrong or where you did that thing back then. It's like the old joke. He says, Tom was a bridge builder. And he said, you know, I built the bridge over the Wye River. He says, am I known as Tom the bridge builder? No. He says, I built the bridge over the Thames. He says, am I known for being Tom the bridge builder? No. But shag one sheep, as the old joke goes. And so our negatives sometimes outweigh. They become dominant. They sometimes become dominant even to us. We realize our negative character. And if we don't do anything to change those things, we can nurture the negative. And people will also remember the negative. A negative or an immoral trait outweighs the presence of a positive moral trait on the impressions that we form. One failure to recognize an injustice overshadows any number of good deeds that we might do on a day-to-day basis. And, it's, for instance, in my own home, I clean the kitchen most every day. As many of you know, I wake up between 4 and 5 in the morning, and I start getting my day going. I have a cup of coffee and a smoke, and I read through my emails and stuff like that out on the front patio because I can't smoke a cigarette in the house. And so I do those things, but then I also come in and I clean up the kitchen from the day before. That includes doing the dishes, putting them in the dishwasher, emptying the dishwasher, scrubbing down the countertops, which amazingly get very vile in my house with 3 children who don't know how to wipe anything up after themselves. So I scrub down the countertops, I scrub out the sinks. I take, nowadays especially, I take the bleach wipes and wipe everything down so everything's nice and clean. I sweep the floor in the kitchen, sometimes have to mop it. And so I do all of those things. Now, I do those daily, and those are just daily chores. I don't always get a big pat on the back and, Scotty, what an amazing husband you are because you've cleaned the kitchen. That's just one of my things. It's my duties in the house, my responsibilities. So I don't always get praised for that positive and all the positives in it. But you know what I'll get yelled at for? If I don't know, spilled my coffee on the counter and didn't realize I did it and didn't wipe it up. And my wife will go, who left the coffee rings all over the counter? Was it you, Mr. Perfect? Because I clean things up. And so our negatives, all that to say is that that these failures to recognize an injustice overshadows any number of good deeds that we do. Our failure. And the things that are not our perfections, they will outweigh all the good that we do or try to do. So when it comes to a moral character, people are judged by their weakest link. And a transgression in the moral domain might be less subject to forgiveness than slip-ups in other realms. And so that's the way things kind of are, and that's kind of where we left off last night. And of all the elements of moral character that we can look at, that we can study and research and observe, the ones that carry the most weight are the pure moral traits. Honesty, justness, fairness, trustworthiness, courage, which have nothing to do with warmth or humility or what was the other H again? Honesty. Well, they involve those things, but these are separate things we judge people by, and by which we are judged. In our own judgment of others, honesty outranks even kindness. If you know a kind person, but you know they also lie, that taints everything about that person. I don't like a liar. I don't like it in my kids. Boy, when my kids lie to me, and little kids, they lie about the stupidest things. It's like, hey, who left the cap off the toothpaste in the bathroom? Not me, not me, not me. And I said, well, you know what? Mom and Dad didn't do that because it's, Transformers or I can't think of the names of things, Dora the Explorer toothpaste, in strawberry banana flavor. Dad doesn't use that. And so I said, come on, you guys, it's not a big deal. I just need you to go fix the problem. Go put the toothpaste lid back on, the cap back on, and wipe up the toothpaste that's on the countertop. I said, take you 2 seconds. I said, all I'm asking is who did it. Not me, not me, not me. And my kids will lie about the silliest things. And even in that instant, I know it's not my son because he won't use Dora the Explorer toothpaste. So it's one of my 2 little girls. And so I got to figure out which one is not telling me the truth. And so we talk to him, we say, don't lie to us. Don't lie to us. Why lie about a little thing like that? That's because they don't want to have to go do the fix on it. So, lying is something that can, and this is why we instill this in our kids. If people know you to be a liar, it's like losing trust in that person. Somebody lies to you, the trust is gone forever. And it takes a hell of a lot of work to rebuild that trust and regain it. So absent honesty, no information about a person can be trusted. Because honesty outranks even kindness, and that's a moral trait that canoodles with warmth. And so absent honesty, there's no information about a person that can be trusted. So what makes character the dominant factor in social cognition? Swiftly shaping the impression we form of others in our daily lives. Character reveals a person's deepest intentions toward you and your deepest intentions toward them. Will a person be helpful or will they inflict harm? Knowing someone's character provides important information about how that person is likely to treat us, including in situations in which you're unable to monitor the person's behavior. Trustworthiness, for example, influences the likelihood someone's going to cooperate with you, as essential to business relationships as to romantic ones, in which personal vulnerability is the gateway to intimacy. Let that sink in for a second. Personal trustworthiness is and vulnerability is the gateway to intimacy. Now, there was this Dr. Goodwin that we mentioned yesterday. He and his colleagues asked test subjects to provide their impressions of people who engaged in a dozen different social roles. The surgeon about to operate on you, your daughter's fiance, a judge, a parent, a teacher, a romantic partner, and more. And while the researchers varied the traits assigned to the people, and the more subjects valued a social role, the greater the weight they gave to moral character. And moral character traits informing their impression of a person in that role. Moral character traits proved critically important in assessing romantic partners, because so much is at stake, especially in romantic situations. We're on the lookout for people who might harm us in any way. And frankly, folks, cut through the crap. If you're going to be, and if you got little kids, you can cover their ears if you think this is too much. If you're going to get naked with somebody that you don't know very well, you are giving a certain level of trust to that person. So trustworthiness is really high on the scale for us. And that's just when it comes to sexual behavior or romantic behavior. When you open up your life to somebody else, which are the beginning of a relationship, trustworthiness is an important factor. So the strength of a person's character also determines how well he or she will follow through on plans, goals, commitments, values. That's why when somebody breaks a commitment in a relationship, that's why it takes, if that relationship doesn't end from the other person, it takes a long time to rebuild that trust. And anybody who stays with somebody who breaks their commitment is somebody who must really have an innate love for that other person if they're going to give them the opportunity to show them different. And now, that's not even getting into the whole codependency issue. That's a different kind of, there's not really a trust there. There's a need there. So, these goals, these commitments, these values, this might explain why we found that obituaries are especially rich in information about character. When it comes to summing up a life, character counts most of all. It not only shapes a lifetime's worth of behavior, it's what we seek as others' legacy, why we even bother to read about them or know about them or want to know a thing about them. How many millions of people have passed away in humanity, in the history of humanity, that we know absolutely nothing about? But the ones we know about are either the very bad or the very good. And you get gleanings of people off of their tombstones. When I was in England last time, we went and were looking at gravestones in an old cathedral in Bath. And some of these markers were immaculately written. You know, they had whole paragraphs about these people who saved people during the war, the Crimean War, and things like that. And so just amazing stuff about the character of people. And character is also that thing, by the way, that happens when nobody else is looking. So, there's a three-dimensional model of impression that forms here. We care about the warmth the person generates, and we quickly absorb information about it. We care about the individual's competence. But above all, we want to know about the moral character. It's our best guarantee of safety on the social axis that we spin. So character is so fundamental because we interact with people all the time. And our most moral character helps us balance our interests with those of others. Morality, by definition, is about regulating social relationships. So, in one of her studies of one of these psychologists here that I quoted a ways back, spotlights an element of moral character that's known as guilt proneness. Guilt proneness. The degree to which a person takes on others' perspectives into account and feels responsibility for not harming them. It endows people with concern for the impact of their actions. They consider the behavioral consequences of what they do to others, do on others' welfare. And guilt proneness steers people away from relationships in which they might get a free ride and into more equitable relationships. The importance of character, however, isn't limited to social life. It's also matters intraphysically. I can't even say this word. Intraphysically. Intra, I-N-T-R-A, P-S-Y-C-K, which is psych, I-C-A-L-L-Y. Okay, I'm reading my own word wrong. Parapsychically. Parapsychically. Say that fast 3 times. That's why I can't say it. Character information is crucial for... Well, let me repeat that statement. The importance of character is not limited to social life. It also matters intrapsychically. Character information is crucial to a person's identity and sense of self-worth. And those are the highest in moral character, regarded as important to be and be seen as moral. Do people look at you and ask, is he a moral person? Is she a moral person? Now, maybe we don't use those words all the time. I don't think we go around wondering if so-and-so and so-and-so that we involve ourselves with, or even this show, listening to this show, is the guy talking, is he a moral person? That's a question to ask. And yet, morally people may not even know they're acting in a manner deemed moral. In studies that have been conducted of character in the workplace, co-workers rate the behavior of moral individuals more highly than they do the moral persons themselves. It's simply the water they swim in, and that's likely a source of humility. If you know a person's morality, you not only know how they're going to act toward you, but who that person is. You know something about their core identity. And folks, we got to leave that right there for this first segment because we got to go out to break. Sit tight for 2 minutes. We'll be right back and pick this up where we left off. All right, folks, we're back. Thanks for sitting and hanging on through the break. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to my program, the Intrepid Radio Program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com if you want to find out a little bit more about Odyssey Radio. And as a matter of fact, while I'm sitting here, because I think it's crucial, and I haven't covered this in detail for a long time, Odyssey Radio Network. You want to hear a little bit about them? Let's see. I'm over on their website right now, ODYSY1.com. And they've got a little tag here that says, "Welcome to Odyssey," ODYSY. We pronounce it Odyssey, just like ODYSSEY. And it's your galactic home for science fiction, science fact, and the paranormal. Here at Odyssey, you can enjoy hours, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, of the finest in vintage science fiction, discussion on your favorite sci-fi shows and movies, talk of UFOs and the paranormal, and much, much more. Odyssey, dare to wonder. That's their little tag. Now, I was brought on to the Odyssey Radio Network, which is a kind of a, I don't understand all the business relationships, but like Rocky's show, The Situation Room. It's carried on Mojo 50, and they do a lot of political talk over there. A little more higher critical stuff than a science fiction show. And this is their sister station, Odyssey Radio. And so Odyssey wanted to do more about talking Star Trek, talking Star Wars, all of that kind of stuff. But the more shows that they got on there, I was asked to come on and do a show, and I said, well, I don't strictly talk about that stuff. And they said, that's okay, do your thing. And so I'm doing my thing, and frankly, I'm one of those that fits into, what did it say here above? We talk about UFOs, the paranormal, and so much more. I'm in that so much more category. So that's what Odyssey Radio is all about. We play on iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spreaker, and so many other places where you can pick the show up. They've got 26 terrestrial stations that they broadcast on. Not every show is on there. I don't know if my show is on even half of them, or any of them, for that matter. But you can go over, you can take a look, dig around in their site, click on their schedule, and you can see a 24/7 schedule that you can tune into. And again, like I said, see all the goodness that is Odyssey Radio, or like Odyssey says, dare to wonder. So that's Odyssey Radio, ODYSY1.com. And so now, if you would like to come on over and see the simulcast of this show in video on my YouTube channel, come on over, youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. Say hi to the folks in the chat room, or just sit and watch. Put your 2 cents worth in if you want. Over in the chat room, have a good time with the other IntrepHeads in the IntrepHead family. So thanks for being here tonight. Let's move on. Where we left off, we were talking about moral character and how people in the workplace gauge other people, and how we gauge other people. When you, if you know a person's morality, you not only know how they're going to act toward you, but who that person is. And you know something about their core identity. Now, when we start talking about a moral person, you start thinking of, the straight-laced, perhaps Christian religious right, who says, even at work, oh, praise God for that. We know people like that. That's not necessary. That's the picture, the stereotype we get in our minds about what a moral person is. Moral person doesn't have to be that way. That is the way certain people express their own personal preferences, their own personal moralities, their religious beliefs, and so on. So you got to look at moral character from the inside. There are 2 additional components besides one's identity as a good or not so good person. There's motivational element, that's the desire to do good and avoid doing harm to someone, which does the heavy lifting in treating others fairly. And it's required not only for regulating close relationships, but also for sustaining living in any size group or community. Having the desire to do good is necessary, but it's not sufficient. One must also have the capacity to do good and avoid doing harm. Here's where the cognitive capacity to consider the future consequences comes into play. As in guilt proneness, it works the same way. It's a sine qua non for self-regulation, inhibiting impulses for immediate gratification and overriding temptations. So should internal mechanisms fall short of the challenge, there are informal cultural mechanisms to shore up self-control. The primary function of gossip, so the court of last resort, is formal mechanisms, namely laws. So we have laws, we have gossip, we have all these externals that kind of govern the way people act. Pardon me. And so people in the high H factor, that humility, honesty factor, actually see the world differently from those who lack a high H factor. They look through what is called a moral lens. Most notably, in studies of whistleblowers, it's been found that the lens shines a cognitive spotlight on the moral implications of the choices people face when making decisions. It's in life's typically ambiguous reality, the lens fixes on the human consequences of actions, whether there will be harm to others. Now, the lens allows those who have it to remain steadfast in their moral awareness. For everyone else, moral considerations disappear from views, and what's called ethical fading. Ethical fading. Put those words together and figure out exactly what that means. Your ethics start to, with the person who does not practice being moral. Other concerns are financial or strategic. They loom larger. Now, the problem with character, though, is that it can be hard to discern. When you look at somebody else, can you see somebody's moral character? Just at a first brush. It's hard to discern what's going on. As much as it matters in first impressions, it's usually hard to gauge in such situations. Character typically takes time to reveal itself. Self-reports of character, of course, are as thoroughly unreliable and prone to self-enhancement. Maybe an example anyway. Remember Jared from the Subway commercials? The guy that was like 600 pounds and he lost all this weight eating Subway sandwiches and he was down to like 120 pounds or 180 pounds, whatever it is. And he was great, and he was the spokesman for Subway. And he seemed like such a great guy. And, oh, congrats to this guy. We love you. That's fantastic you were able to do this. And he became the paid spokesman and probably made a lot of money off of Subway for losing weight and getting in shape. And we all admired him. And we all assumed he was a decent guy. Until what happened? It was discovered that he had child porn on his computers and that he was engaging in pedophilic types of behavior. Well, of course, Subway immediately dropped him and immediately pulled all references to him, all advertisements with his voice or with his image on their ads. This was about 5 or 6 years ago, I think this happened, maybe longer. But Jared became a thing of the past immediately because it's very hard to determine by looking at someone. Even the people that worked with him didn't know his secrets. And so moral character might look one way on the outside but be very different on the inside. Character typically takes time to reveal itself. Self-reports of character, of course, are thoroughly unreliable. They're prone to self-enhancement. If I were to talk about all my goodnesses, and let me get that voice out of it, Let's say I'm writing a bio about myself, and I've got to write. It was Mark Twain that said there isn't the honest man that exists that could write a thoroughly honest autobiography. And that's because there's always secrets we'll keep back. There's always things that, people have said to me tongue-in-cheek, you should run for office. And I said, yeah, I got too many skeletons in my closet. Ain't gonna happen. That's because I know the things that are there. I know the things I've done. I know the places where I'm not a perfect guy. Do I want those all pulled out into the open? You know what? I could live through that, and I'd make it. But the moral picture I present of myself is probably very different than the one you would find if you were digging through my underwear drawer or looking at my personal files. And I'm not hiding anything, folks. I'm just saying, you never really know somebody on the outside until you get to know them on the inside. And so character can be inferred only from our behavior. The situations that draw it forth from people, ones that pitch values into sharp competition, tend to be reasonable rare in daily life. And moral character shows itself only when somebody's kind of choice is required. Most every day, circumstances don't present on a test of loyalty, for example, or offer an opening for a display of courage. On the other hand, there might be far more everyday opportunities for showing kindness and compassion. So while people can give the impression that they're good, decent, moral people of great, upstanding character by their daily warmth and kindnesses and compassion and their honesty, it's when the rubber meets the road when you see whether or not that person is made up of moral character. You understand what the difference is there? What I'm getting at, anyway? You probably are way ahead of me, light years. I'm just explaining it as if you don't know any of this stuff. And so highly public displays of moral behavior are subject to scheming. That's arising less from selfish motives or selfless motives than a concern with buffing one's own reputation. So since moral behavior is judged by its weakest performance, it takes exposure to a variety of situations to get a full picture of someone's true character. So, you can listen to me on the radio or watch me. Same with Rocky Stucci and I. And you get an impression for the kind of character we have. And something we like to do and I think Rocky and I both work very hard at this, to present as humble a picture about ourselves as possible, is we bring up our faults and the things where we've screwed up. Rocky the other day told about how he reacted to a big semi-truck that cut him off or something like that. And he got out and yelled at the guy, and then he immediately called his wife and said, I slipped back into that, and his wife chewed him out. And so we all listened to that story. Rocky presents that story to show that, look, I'm not a perfect guy. Don't get any wrong impressions of me. I'm a decent guy. I work hard at it. But I still have stuff that's right below the surface. You peel back the upper layer, you might see something you don't want to see. But we're working on those things. Moral character is not a passive trait. Character actually steers people into some situations out of others. Cohen defines, up above, that we talked about, those with the high moral character especially avoid environments that could lead to others being harmed. But they do more. They even shape situations. Instead of brooding about a date gone off track, we saw that guy in the example I gave yesterday. He saw an opportunity to facilitate his date's various goals and allay her concerns about disappointing him. So when the unforeseen erupted, we saw an array of choices. We see arrays of choices when the unexpected comes our way. And there's so many of them. And who's going to be the beneficiary of the choices that we make? And what's that going to do for our character when other people see us act? And this is the stuff where the rubber meets the road of building character and having a moral life and leading a good life. Everything that unfolds in all of our situations place us squarely on our own team, somebody else's team, or a totally different team. People are going to see how we act. And how we act in surprise situations or spontaneous situations is most likely going to place our trust in those who show competence, benevolence, integrity, and vice versa. So trust, researchers know, is what creates the willingness to be vulnerable in social interactions. It's the single most important ingredient in rewarding healthy relationships. So transformational moments sit somewhere on the boundary between logic and emotion. Remember, I asked, what transformational moments have you experienced? Yesterday I asked, have you had those decisive moments that you know have shaped your life or shaped your character? Research on psychotherapy shows that insight alone, no matter how brilliant, rarely leads to profound and sustainable behavioral change if it's not accompanied by some level of emotional understanding. So, our peak moments, how are we affected by those? How do people see us responding to those peak moments? Surprise is part of the power. It guarantees that we're untainted by egotistic concerns. The disequilibrium of such moments creates and it leaves the self undefined or undefended. And those moments are memorable, not just for the insights they deliver with great impact, but also for their psychic purity. And so rare openings in time, character-defining moments are transformative for us because they guide us into the future. They reveal our true character, and they reveal the character flaws we may need to work on. And they distill the complexities of life, and the crystalline reliability of information revealed allows us to make strong inferences about what we can expect ahead from the people in our lives. So it's all how you look at others, it's all how others look at you and notice you. And you know, one of the ultimate character development workouts is conflict. Like it or not, the people who are our antagonists help us build our emotional muscles. Have you ever noticed that the same type of character keeps showing up in your life, pushing all your buttons? These people may look nothing alike or even share the same gender, but they keep presenting you with more or less the same frustrations and issues. You know, when I was going through some counseling for myself, my own getting a grip on some of my own past issues, and we're talking 20 years ago, I was told that I was the textbook case of a kid who had been abused, sexual abuse, and because I did the things that sexually abused people did when it came to my relationships. I could look back and see a string of bad relationships where I got myself sunk deeper and deeper into those relationships for the sole purpose of subconsciously fixing the thing that was going wrong. Because when I was a kid, I couldn't do that, and so I carried that subconsciously into my present, and I kept choosing relationships that would put me in a position to try to right the wrong. What had gone wrong? And this was in my romances. It was in at least one of my marriages. It was in my business relationships and my friendships. And believe it or not, I had a really tough time standing up for myself for a very long time. I would allow myself to get walked on, and then I would complain about it. I was that codependent. And so we get ourselves into these situations sometime. We work our way subconsciously into these situations and these relationships that keep presenting us with more or less the same frustrations, the same baggage we have to work through, and the same issues. It might not be a certain person, but maybe a certain negative situation you always find yourself struggling with. Perhaps you're always picking up the slack, and yet your contributions are never appreciated. Maybe you keep dating high-maintenance men or women, or neglectful men or women. And so why do these characters and situations keep appearing in your storyline? That's a good question to ask yourself. Hang on, I need a sip of coffee and it's not here. I didn't bring it into the room. Oh well, damn it. Onward and forward. Now, if you look at life as a story, all these characters that you encounter are the antagonists of our narrative. And while we may not like or appreciate them, they play an instrumental role in shaping our plot lines and our personal character. The antagonists are the personal trainers, so to speak, who push us forward. They push us beyond our perceived limitations to develop our flabby, underutilized emotional muscles. And as with personal trainer, we might openly swear or grin through gritted teeth. We might assign the person sadistic aspirations, thinking that he or she wants to harm or destroy us. But if we read between the lines, the antagonist is just helping us build our strengths, whether they know it or not, while further honing the underdeveloped areas within ourselves. Life has a purpose, and there are things that happen to us. And what we have to do, like we talked about weeks and weeks ago, is we have to look at the present moment we're in the now. Become aware, become awake, become aware that you're awake, and realize that life is the stuff that goes on around us, and we need to bring ourselves to a place where we're in the now and we understand how to act and what we're doing and what we're bringing to the table and what's being brought to the table to us. Most of us will go out of our way to avoid this kind of stuff. No one really consciously desires antagonists or the conflicts they present. We try to avoid those things like the plague. The fight-or-flight response being hardwired into our DNA. However, in the world of novels and films and all this fictional stuff that we put into our mind, not only do we expect conflicts, but also we recognize that they're an important part of the hero's development. Like we talked about Star Trek yesterday. And if you the stories we read, the things that entertain our minds, they're an important part of our own development because we see those character archetypes. So we have to embrace our opportunities to build character. Every protagonist, and now I'm talking with the metaphor of our life story that we are making, we are writing, so to speak, metaphorically. Every protagonist, and that's you, has a character arc. A particular way he or she matures and develops in response to the shifting tides of the story going on around them. At the outset of every narrative, the protagonist, that's you, in your life story that you're writing, possesses certain viewpoints and capabilities that have gotten the character by until now. Inevitably, situations arise that challenge these perspectives or demand other skills that the hero doesn't yet possess. So, thus creating the main conflict of the narrative. And after all, if the character already possessed the necessary skills or the broader perspective, there would be no challenge and no conflict in the story, and the story would be rather boring and blasé. So ultimately, the protagonist faces an opportunity to change in some way. The degree to which the protagonist embraces this challenge or tries to avoid it determines who he or she becomes, for better or for worse. You know, that makes me think, just while you're home, and if you haven't seen this movie and you have the time on your hands, I would highly recommend Ben Stiller's movie, his remake of The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Now, if you've seen that movie, and you had the same reaction I had to it, it is one of, I think, the most wonderfully made movies. And he is this type of character. He is a protagonist that changes through the course of the events thrown on his plate. And it's, I would say, one of the most beautiful movies I've seen. So if you get a chance, rent that or buy it or watch it, if it's available on Netflix or Amazon or something. While you're sitting at home, you're looking for a good movie, Ben Stiller's The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. It's nothing like the Jimmy Stewart movie from several decades ago. Totally different kind of movie. And I think you're going to appreciate it. But this is the kind of person or thing we're talking about with protagonists. You, as the protagonist in your own story. You're an ever-evolving protagonist with choices to make about how to respond to the stuff that happens in your life. And as an ever-evolving protagonist, not only do you possess the power to adapt to plot twists, but you can view these unexpected difficulties as opportunities to go further and to hone your own work on yourself and different aspects of your character. After all, character development doesn't occur in a vacuum. Life typically presents us with circumstances that bump up against our rougher edges. And it presents us with those circumstances. And the circumstances presented by the antagonists of our stories present us with opportunities to refine these growth edges or run the risk of becoming perhaps even edgier. Now, there's a lot more to this, and once again, I've run up to the end of the show. So tomorrow we'll pick this up. We'll talk more about this, character development. Then we're going to get into marital conflicts tomorrow and how character develops in those. And so we'll save that for tomorrow. Thanks for being here. See you in 23 hours. Have a good night.